crime story.
The disappearance of Hollywood actress Jean Spangler has not been solved even after 70 years. On October 7, 1949, the enigmatic disappearance of Hollywood actress Jean Spangler baffled investigators and continues to remain an unsolved mystery even after 7 decades. Jean Spangler, born on September 2, 1923, in Seattle, Washington, was the daughter of Florence and Cecil Spangler. From a young age, she nurtured dreams of becoming a model or actress. Following her graduation from Franklin High School in Los Angeles, she promptly ventured into the world of modeling. Her career eventually expanded to include dancing, captivating audiences at renowned venues such as Florence Gardens and the Earl Carroll Theatre. Despite the latter's somewhat shady reputation, these performances only added to her growing fame. In 1941, Jean began to secure cameo roles in Hollywood movies like When My Baby Smiles at Me, Chicken Every Sunday, and The Piper. Over the course of her brief career, she contributed to 8 films, although her involvement in over 15 productions often went uncredited due to the insignificance of her roles. At the age of 19, Jean tied the knot with Dexter Benner, a budding entrepreneur engaged in plastics manufacturing, just 2 years her senior. Their marriage proved short-lived, marred by Benner's alleged cruelty, leading to Jean's decision to leave him. Despite their separation, their relationship persisted, and a year and a half later, their daughter, Christina, was born. However, by 1946, the couple had severed all ties, embarking on a contentious custody battle where Benner accused Jean of prioritizing social gatherings over their daughter's upbringing. Primarily due to financial constraints, Benner was granted custody of Christina, resulting in Jean's exclusion from her daughter's life. Spangler, determined to regain access to her child, pursued legal avenues, ultimately overturning the previous custody ruling and reuniting with Christina. In 1948, Jean relocated with her daughter to a modest 3-room apartment in Park La Brea, Los Angeles, where her brother and his wife also resided. Here's a revised chronology leading up to Jean Spangler's disappearance. October 7th, 17. Jean informed her daughter-in-law, Sophie, that she was leaving. Her mother was away visiting relatives in Kentucky, so Sophie agreed to care for Christina. Jean mentioned that she was heading to a meeting with Benner to discuss overdue child support payments, following which she had plans for an evening of filming for a new movie. 18. A witness spotted Jean at the farmer's market near her apartment. The vendor recalled her strolling amongst the stalls, seemingly in anticipation of someone's arrival. 19. Jean called Sophie, who was staying at the apartment, and informed her that the evening shoot was likely to extend into the night, meaning she wouldn't return by midnight as previously agreed. It is probable that Jean was making this call from the farmer's market rather than the movie studio. Regardless, this marked the last conversation between Sophie and Jean. October 8th, 1:30. Witnesses observed Jean at the Cheesebox restaurant on Sunset Boulevard, accompanied by a tall, dark-haired man. Their heated argument was conspicuous to onlookers. The last sighting of Jean at this establishment was recorded at 2:30 a.m. on the clock. Between 5 and 6 in the morning, an attendant at a city gas station engaged in a brief conversation with Jean and an unidentified man who pulled up in a convertible for a refueling stop. As they departed, Jean urgently called out to the on-duty clerk, "Instruct the police to trail that vehicle." The clerk later contacted the police to report the incident. However, his recollection lacked essential details such as the license plate number or a clear description of the man, rendering the information of limited use. With Jean failing to return home by the morning of October 8th, Sophie's concern deepened, prompting her to report Spangler's disappearance to the Wilshire Division of the Los Angeles Police Department that very morning. However, due to Jean's profession and age, law enforcement initially did not treat her vanishing with the seriousness it deserved and refrained from publicizing her search. Discovery in Griffith Park. Griffith Park, one of North America's largest urban parks sprawling over 17.5 square kilometers, occupies the eastern side of the Santa Monica Mountains in the Los Feliz neighborhood. It boasts an observatory, a zoo, museums, and an amphitheater, yet harbors a more ominous aspect. Griffith Park has historically been a site of frequent murders and body discoveries. On October 9th, a Griffith Park employee stumbled upon Jean Spangler's bag near the park's entrance, containing her identification card and a handwritten note. The note read as follows: "Kirk, I can no longer delay. I'm going to see Dr. Scott. It's best to do this while Mom is away." Although one of the handles on Jean's bag had been torn off, it appeared that she hadn't been subjected to a thorough search. Sophie confirmed that Jean had not taken any money with her on that day, making it unlikely that the bag had been lost due to a robbery. It was only after the discovery of Jean's bag that the police began to treat her disappearance with the gravity it deserved. By late afternoon, a group of 60 police officers and volunteers had assembled in the park to initiate the search for Jean. Simultaneously, investigators commenced efforts to locate potential witnesses who could shed light on her whereabouts. On the evening prior to her disappearance, Jean had informed Sophie that she was scheduled for an evening shoot in a new movie. Consequently, the police decided to follow this lead. However, the studio where she was employed had no record of Jean working that evening or even appearing for the shoot. Ex-husband. The police had a conversation with Dexter Benner, who asserted that he had not crossed paths with his ex-wife for several weeks. His new spouse, Lynn, whom he had married just 2 months prior, provided him with an alibi. Although Benner had delayed alimony payments, he refuted Sophie's assertion that Jean had intended to meet with him that evening to discuss financial matters or a similar topic. Following Spangler's mysterious disappearance, Benner and Jean's mother, Florence, embarked on an extended legal battle for custody of their daughter, Christina. Ultimately, Benner emerged victorious in the custody dispute. 2 years later, Dexter and his new wife initiated adoption proceedings to formally establish Lynn as Christina's mother. They contended that Jean had abandoned her daughter as the basis for the adoption. However, a judge ruled that there was insufficient evidence to confirm Jean's demise and thus obstructed the adoption. Subsequently, Benner and his family relocated to Florida, never to return to California. Kirk's lover. Following the ordeal with Jean's ex-husband, the police initiated interviews with her colleagues. Robert Cummings, who co-starred with her in the film Girl of the Year, recounted a conversation that took place 2 weeks prior to her disappearance. Jean had confided in Robert, sharing that she had recently met someone, deeming it the best moment of her life. She didn't regard the relationship as particularly serious and disclosed the man's name. Jean's mother, Florence, informed the authorities that she had heard her daughter mention someone named Kirk, whom she knew from her workplace. Florence also noted that a person named Kirk had picked Jean up from home on several occasions, yet he always remained in his car, which struck her as unusual. A 13-year-old neighbor who was acquainted with Jean reported that she had observed Spangler driving toward North Hollywood with an older man at the wheel a week before her disappearance. Jean appeared visibly anxious during this encounter. Given the personal connection of the witness to Jean, the police took her statement seriously, though this lead eventually led to a dead end. At some point, actor Kirk Douglas came under suspicion, but he was not seriously considered as a suspect due to his limited acquaintance with Jean, having only met her a few times during the filming of Trumpeter. The botched abortion. As time passed, the case remained in a state of stagnation. Private investigator Steve Hodel, who undertook an investigation into Jean Spangler's disappearance, authored a book chronicling his pursuit. In the book, Hodel asserted, "I believe that Kirk isn't a first name, as many, including LAPD Chief Ted Brown, who initially suspected actor Kirk Douglas of the murder, assumed. It is, in fact, a last name. I believe Kirk referred to Dr. Eric Kirk, a chiropractor and abortionist." The publication of this book created a considerable commotion, even leading to the brief arrest of Dr. Eric Kirk. However, former police officer Ed Jockish, now LAPD captain, responded with an open letter to the book's author, Steve Hodel. "Your book is riddled with baseless insinuations, misinformation, and logical fallacies, rendering it impossible to take seriously," wrote Ed Jockish. Subsequently, one of Jean's friends disclosed to the police that Spangler had been 3 months pregnant, a result of an affair. This new revelation prompted investigators to initiate interviews with all doctors bearing the last name Scott in the Los Angeles vicinity. However, none of these doctors reported having seen Jean. Additionally, investigators learned about a former medical student referred to as Doc who hailed from a wealthy background and carried out illicit abortions for a fee. Yet, no one was willing to provide information about this enigmatic doctor, leading to a dead end for the police. Furthermore, it came to light that during Benner's military service, Jean had been involved with an airline pilot named Scotty, who had issued threats to her, vowing to harm her if she ever left him. Despite this lead, it failed to yield any substantial progress in the investigation. The Mafia. Because Jean had a history of visiting the Palm Springs area and had been sighted there just days before her vanishing, the police conducted interviews with employees at local establishments where Spangler might have frequented. Detectives uncovered that Jean had been seen in the company of Davy Aguila and Frank Nicoli, associates of the notorious mobster Mickey Cohen. Efforts were made to locate Aguila and Nicoli, but both individuals mysteriously disappeared. Later, the police received information suggesting that they had met with foul play, allegedly meeting their demise at the depths of the Cucamonga lime quarry. Regrettably, neither of their bodies was ever recovered. Given the formidable power and extreme ruthlessness of the mob, it was conceivable that Jean might have inadvertently witnessed a confrontation, or even been forcibly abducted. 4 months down the line, a customs official in El Paso, near the Mexican border, made a claim of having seen Jean alive in the company of Nicoli and Aguila. Another witness reported encountering the trio at a nearby hotel and verified their identities from photographs. However, the police could not definitively establish whether it was indeed Spangler, as the trail became lost somewhere in Mexico. Subsequently, additional witnesses emerged, but due to the extensive scale of the manhunt for Jean, one of the most significant in Los Angeles history, a multitude of erroneous claims surfaced, making it challenging to ascertain the credibility of these sightings. In the end, none of the prevailing theories, including involvement by her ex-husband, a romantic partner, a botched abortion, or mob-related kidnapping, could be definitively corroborated, leaving the true fate of Jean Spangler shrouded in mystery. I hope you liked this story. Please don't forget to leave a comment sharing with your thoughts below. Give a thumbs up this video, and remember to hit that subscribe button to stay tuned for more captivating stories. Thank you for joining us on this remarkable journey, and we'll see you in the next video.